Hi, I'm sorry. I'm like so late to my own live. Hello. I was helping Peggy with a thing. I see lots of people in the room. Also, some mention of somebody having too much wine if I wait. So, I mean, I was kind of motivated to take even longer. Look what Peggy's working on. Oh, wait, I gotta make my banner go away. It's a wolfie. It's so pretty. Look, look, it's not finished yet, but it's real pretty. It's real pretty.
We have a conundrum. Should I finish it as a reading cloth?
It'd be real big and tall. It's tall.
You'd lay it over your table. I think like people might have a drape, or should I finish it as a pillow?
Just wondering if you should make it a pillow. I don't know.
This was our dilemma.
We were struggling with sewing things. Lots of wows and pretties. I don't think anybody's weighed in with an opinion yet, but there is a lag in the chat. So
I don't think anybody has an opinion who is like, ooh, send it to my house.
Yeah, I'm waiting. Oh, wait, there.
Well, a good wall hanging.
Altar cloth. Yeah, it could be a good wall hanging. You could. What about putting something? It's so.
Well,
show the back of it.
Oh,
it's got that on the back too. It's like all galaxy.
Back is galaxy, so you can use it in either direction.
Brenda's like, I'll have it, please. Is it cozy? Well, it's it could be like a. Could it be like a lap blanket? It's probably too narrow to be a lap blanket.
I've already finished it in this shape. So I need to decide whether I'm going to stuff it and make a pillow, which means that it stays here.
I swear we'll get on track eventually.
Or whether I finish it into a reading cloth, because you could always drape it over your table for looks, and then when it's time to read, just flip it over to whatever direction you want.
That's true. I don't know, man.
Okay.
Somebody said tablecloth. Somebody said wall hanging. Lennon said I'd hang it on my door. I think it needs.
We've been agonizing with this for like half an hour now.
What about like attaching some kind of ribbon to the top so that it's ready to go? Or no, because you'd have to put something to make it rigid.
Honestly, this is light, so I would just tell if somebody wanted to do that, I would just recommend a safety pin and whatever ribbon or cording they like.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll continue agonizing.
We're still figuring it out. Okay. Sewing crisis in the Lopez household.
It's a drama because it's the only piece. It's the
only one.
I could only get one of these. So
yeah.
Every now and again, I find cool stuff, but I can only find one, which is why it's so cool. But
yeah,
I can only find one of these.
So, hello, welcome to Eclectic Witchcraft 101. We'll eventually get on track, and on task, merged.
Oh, you know what I should do?
What?
Have a
Peggy's like, have a contest. Like a giveaway? No. That might solve our problem.
I think I know what the vote's going to be.
Okay, who thinks we should do it as a giveaway? I've actually got a couple things to do as an upcoming giveaway. They're all going to say yes. Why am I even asking? So today's topic on Eclectic Witchcraft 101 is intention. So I wanted to talk about intention as like Becca's magical reading says giveaway. Inked Witchy Girl says giveaway.
You know what? That saves me from having to agonize.
It's true. So watch for that upcoming. That'll be happening. Hi Tammy. Hi Ravenbird. I didn't say hello individually to anybody. Hello everybody. What were you saying then?
If I do it as a giveaway, I can leave it right now, and then whoever wins it can decide how they want it finished.
That's true. So don't finish it yet then. There we go. Problem solved. Ravenbird, just send to my house. I'll figure out what to make it. Noted. So intention as the foundation for any magical work is essentially the topic. It's actually a really simple topic, but I'm hoping we'll chat about it a little bit because it's simple at the outside looking in, like it's a simple concept, but it can be very complex and layered. But essentially intention, the best way I know of how to put this, intention is like the seed for any magical working. And everything you do once you've formed this seed is like nurturing it and getting it to grow. So everything else you do around this seed of intention is what's going to help it grow roots. It's what's going to help it sprout and eventually flower. So for me, the intention is like I love that, Inked Witchy Girl. So for me, the intention is like the most important part of any working, because forming that clear intention, figuring it out, and creating that seed to represent exactly what you want it to represent, not to seed, creating that seed to represent exactly what you want it to represent, and then holding that as a clear image in your mind when you do any kind of magical work, whether it's something tangible and physical that you do, or whether it's literally just focusing on that intention. Everything after that point is based on how you've initially formed that seed. Apparently, I'm going to just keep creating a seed in my hands. That's what's going to happen. So the layers of creating the intention in the first place is, I think, where all the potency of the magic really sits, because that's where you're going to decide what is it I'm trying to accomplish is a good question to help form your intention. What is it I'm trying to accomplish? Another question would be, what are the ethical or moral restrictions or container? What is the ethical or moral container around what it is that I want to accomplish? As in, what are some things I need to consider? Are there things that I want to make sure don't happen? Are there things that I want to make sure do happen? Are there people or situations that I want to be unaffected? Are there situations and people that I'm hoping will be affected? What is the container that's going to contain this seed? Like, what are the boundaries and the barriers for it? How am I going to hem it in and focus it? So I think those are important considerations for forming your intention. I think considering whether you have a short-term goal or a long-term goal or both are also part of forming your initial seed of intention. As in, let's say manifestation work, like abundance and manifestation for, like, when we're talking financial abundance, material abundance. If we're doing work around prosperity and abundance, then do we have a short-term goal for immediate help with, say, an urgent situation in our life that we need that financial and material prosperity to come through for? And then if we do that, what happens after that? What is the seed's job after that immediate need has been met? Is it done? In which case that's cool, but that's something to think about. Is it something that you want to get a burst of something to help you through a short-term period, but then sustain you over a longer period of time? And what does that look like? When you're considering forming your intention and you're trying to figure out what the seed of your working is going to be, there's so many layers of things you can dive into. You can look at, what am I willing to sacrifice as part of this intention? What am I going to be asking of myself? Because forming an intention about what you want is a little bit like picking what your lottery numbers are going to be, right? You want to be really intentional about what are the lottery numbers going to be, because those are going to help manifest your intention, right? So it's kind of like picking your lottery numbers, but actually figuring out what you're going to do and how you're going to move it forward is kind of like the action of deciding that you're going to at least buy a ticket. Maybe you're going to buy one ticket. Maybe you're going to buy one ticket a week for the next month. Maybe you're going to buy one ticket a day for 4 days. But deciding all the elements that are going to be at play about what you're going to ask of yourself. A better way to put this might be, okay, I want to hold an intention that prosperity and material abundance are going to come to me. Here's the short-term thing that I want. Here's the long-term thing that I want. And here are some things that I'm going to immediately commit to as part of this experience, right? As part of this working. So I'm going to commit to putting in a certain amount of my own energy. And this all is part of intention. Before you've actually formed an official battle plan, it's more about deciding how much you're willing to put into it so that you know that at the outset. If you want the kind of working that's going to be more of like a passive working, so here's a good example. A sleeping better working. For me, a sleeping better working as part of forming that intention for me is about deciding, okay, I want to sleep better. So I'm going to be committing first up to creating a bit of a bedtime routine. And that's the only thing I'm going to ask of myself. I want the magic to work fairly passively. So my intention for myself is I'm going to do a few tangible things, but my intention, I'm not sure if I'm expressing this right, but my intention is that the magical working itself is going to continue and be something that I feed that doesn't have an end date. It doesn't have an end goal. I feel like I'm a little all over the place with explaining this. Peggy's commandeered the chat.
I was just about to say I'm very, very sorry, but
it's fine.
The wolf has that wolf has inspired. Yeah, I've commandeered the chat.
I'm gonna drag it back. We're gonna drag it back to intention. That's the whole point of the chat.
Okay, that's the whole point of the chat. But I'm an asshole, and nobody minds today.
Okay. Okay, so initial thoughts from you guys on intention. Do you have a practice already? And if you do, how do you go about figuring out what your intention is going to be? Or do you figure it out on the fly? How has that worked for you? How has that not worked for you? I'd be curious what some of your guys' experience have been. Yeah, the behavior backs up the intention. That's a good way to put it, Katie. But part of it to me is like, Deb, we love both of you. Thank you. Part of the intention crafting for me is that I want to decide up front how much, maybe the better way to express it is the ratio of me versus other, me versus magic, me versus like, is this a 50-50 kind of deal where I'm going to put in about half the effort and I expect the magic to kick in the other half and like do the other work for me? Is this like a 70-30 kind of split? Maybe that's overly specific, but I feel like for me, it's about knowing what part is going to be tangible action and what part is going to be this working. And knowing that helps me to form a more clear intention. I don't know. I got distracted by chat. Thanks, Ravenbird and Peggy. Hi, Lucy. Becca's magical reading says, intention to me is the energy I have available to make what I want happen. Okay, interesting. And Raven Morning Glory says, I figure it out on the fly, but at times it's difficult. Yeah. Sometimes I figure it out on the fly and I'm like, I need to do a working. What is my focus? And I distill it down to the simplest concept. I do think for me, whatever I decide my intention is going to be, it has to be something that is memorable, that is easy for me to remind myself of and focus on. So for example, I did a working earlier this month where it involved multiple people who needed support, but there was a common thread between those situations. And that common thread became the seed of my intention. That became the words that I focused on. That became the whole focal point for the working, was this one common thread among these different experiences, and going, okay, this is the commonality, and because this is the commonality, that's going to be my intention. And then I also thought about, even though I did this fairly quickly, I also thought about, how do I want this to play out? Sometimes I've done workings that are open-ended where however they play out is kind of okay. Let me give you an example. So I want to provide support energy to somebody maybe going through a hard time. In that case, my intention is to kind of create almost like a battery full of supportive energy that somebody else can tap into unconsciously as they see fit to put to whatever purpose they need most in that moment. So I'm just sort of like charging up a little battery and saying, here you go, here's a little battery. You use that how you need to use it. So I'm not giving the working a goal so much as to be available to be drawn upon. So that's an example of like an open-ended intention where my intention is just to create the energy and the support, but not to tell the magic how I want it to play out. But sometimes I'm doing the kind of magical working where I'm very clear about exactly how I want to play, how I want it to play out. In which case, I want to be very specific in my intention, because there's a whole be careful what you wish for kind of energy. TC's life, are we talking about the intention of the working or the attention we give the work with doing our part in the working? I was kind of talking about both. Part of my forming the intention is knowing going in how much I'm willing to put into it. I don't have to know all the specifics of how I'm going to continue to feed and how I'm going to continue to work with that working, but I do want to know how much of my continued involvement is going to be necessary. Does that make sense? So it's like, oh, I'm going to do this initial working and then I'm just going to hold space for that working and then I'm done. And knowing that up front helps me to form an intention that is clear. And once I have a clear intention, I then can build a working from that place. Inked Witchy Girl, I set the intention to create a peaceful and positive life for myself after my 24-year marriage separation. I had to put a lot of work into it daily and I'm seeing the results every day. Yeah, that's a really good example. You've got a very open-ended working that requires nonstop commitment from you and constant work from you. But some people may want to do a working where it's like, I'm going to create an open-ended working where, okay, a good example is one of my prosperity workings is about financial and emotional prosperity, right? So I created an intention. I decided what that was going to look like. And for me, it looked like creating a bit of an altar space, and setting up certain correspondences and continuing to focus on that existing altar space, feeding it with my attention after the fact. But very little is required for me beyond staying mindful and present in that intention. I mean, yeah, cyclical talking. So, but I like to know up front, is this going to be an active or a passive working? What are the ethical boundaries around it? What are the moral boundaries around it? How do I want it to play out if I have a very specific idea of how I want it to play out? Like, for example, part of forming an intention for me on prosperity work is, what do I want that prosperity to look like at the end of the day? And usually for me, it's like, I want to be financially comfortable enough that I don't have stress over money related situations. So I want to be financially comfortable enough that I don't have to worry about those kinds of things, but I don't put a specific number on it. That's part of forming the intention for me, is this is what I want this to look like at the end, right? I want it to look like this. So I form that very clear vision of what I want the working to look like. And then I think about, okay, I'm going into it with an understanding that I still need to be open to opportunities as they come up. I'm still going to need to do this. I'm still going to need to put actual effort in. All of these things I'm aware of, and that all went into forming the seed of this particular working. I hope that makes sense. You can still figure out the details and the specifics after you formed your intention, but your intention is kind of like, it's the guidepost, or it's the true north, or the North Star for your working. It's going to be the guiding light. It's going to be your compass, right? It's going to be the thing that kind of you orient your working around. So spending some time on it, even if that's not a lot of time relative to the working you want to do, but spending a little bit of time clarifying what it is you want and how much energy you want to put into it is an important part of forming the seed, I think. Katie Hines says, like, a one-time working versus doing it over time. Yeah, knowing that up front. Like, if you're like, oh, okay, I want to have more money, that could be an intention, right? But because it's so non-specific, when you go to plan your working, you're now floundering, because you're like, okay, well, I want to have more money, but how much more money? And
millions and millions of dollars. I'm pretty clear on how much money I want.
Okay, Peggy's got it covered. But if you just think, I want more money, and you try to build a working around that, there's not enough solidity to that intention. There's not enough of a form to that intention to help you build a working. And the point of talking about this as a foundational idea is that if you spend most of your energy and effort preparing for a working by getting clear about your intention, the working and building a spell or building a working around that gets really easy. And this is the point. This is where we put in our agonizing, right? This is where we really sit with the idea of what it is we want to do magically, and start to create something that's going to feel concrete for us to focus on. Lennon says, yes, I often include these things on a journal page before even starting. Yeah, excellent, exactly. Lucy says, I think for intention to come true, we are putting all the effort all the way, but maybe sometimes more conscious than others. Yeah, you can decide, do I want this to be a passive working or an active working? That's a simple question you can ask yourself when you're forming your intention. So for me, a passive working is, I'm going to create something. Maybe it's a talisman, maybe it's a spell pouch, maybe it's a witch's ball, something. Maybe I'm going to charge an item or something, but I'm going to create something that I'm going to pour all of this focus and intention and energy into, and then I'm going to let this item work passively in the background. That is a valid way to do magic. So that would be a passive working. You have an intention, and you're going to form it around you're going to form that intention around, is it passive or is it active? An active working is like, I'm going to form an intention that I'm going to do an active working, and that's something that you continue to feed, that you continue to do regular work on, and continue sort of nurturing it along. And I think all magic requires a little bit of nurturing or refreshing every once in a while, but you want to be clear going in, is this a passive type working where it's like a one-time deal, you're going to create a thing and then let that thing do the work? Or is it active? And those are both valid ways to form magical practices or to form magical workings. But I think it's good to figure that out in the beginning, rather than forming an intention and getting ready to sit down and do a working and then floundering because you don't know what's next. It's kind of like, it's another good example. It's kind of like, I'm really good. I like metaphors because they really help me. No, I'm blanking on another metaphor. Maybe one will come to me. Jujubee, I have a charm that I made for protection of my home. Is that passive or active? I would see that as passive. I have items like that in my home that I've charged and given a job. I do like spiritual maintenance of those things or magical maintenance of those things. So every once in a while, I will spend time kind of refreshing it or recharging it, kind of like a battery that gets depleted. But those to me would be a passive working. And active working, which and really you still I think maintain these to a certain degree, but an active working to me would be like healing work, where I want something to be ongoing. I want to continue to feed it. So perhaps I'm holding a healing space for a friend who's going through a hard time. So I might go, okay, my intention is to make this an active working. So I'm going to perhaps charge a candle, but I'm going to light that candle every single day before bed and spend a few minutes with it, like continuing to feed that energy and send it through. So that's a more active working. Whereas creating a specially charged item and writing power words around it and maybe building a little spell sachet that you then gift this person who's going through a tough time and needs healing is what I would consider a more passive working. Yes, Ultraviolet says passive isn't less than active, though. Yeah, there's no hierarchy here. Each has its place, and some people will resonate more with more passive workings, and some people will resonate more with more active workings. So, for example, maybe somebody who has found a lot of comfort and support in ritual, such as maybe you always really loved prayer and you were raised in a household where prayer was a really supportive, nurturing thing. You might resonate more with active workings because they may feel more supportive and fulfilling to you than a passive working. Marion says, so could it be like active working is hiring an outfit as opposed to passive actually buying an outfit? Yeah, I think that makes sense. Exactly. Yeah. It's kind of like, yeah, that's a really, really good metaphor. Yeah, Jujubee says, yeah, she said to charge every so often, so I charge it again every spring. Yeah, exactly. Some people do certain protection magic on their house and they refresh it maybe seasonally, or they refresh it at certain times of the year. A lot of my workings are passive workings because I really enjoy the type of work where you charge an item and then you use that item for a specific purpose.
Did you see Erica's comment? Maybe I missed this in an earlier video.
Oh, no.
I think it's really interesting because that's kind of a conversation that we have quite regularly.
Yeah, Erica says, maybe I missed this in an earlier video, but I don't equate witchcraft with spirituality. Do you? And is that part of this series, or is this related to secular witchcraft? One thing I've learned about the 30 days of witchcraft, or 31 days of witchcraft, which I'm a little behind on, and I want to do a wrap up on. I said that my witchcraft is secular and not spiritual and not religious, because I see the craft as a set of practices and the spiritual beliefs as like a set of feelings and beliefs.
That's also why you use the word eclectic, though, because it's very much individual to you.
Yeah, everybody needs to figure this out for themselves, for sure. But my personal take on it is I've discovered that while, yes, I could have my craft without my spiritual path, and I could have a spiritual path without my craft, which is what separates them for me, I've discovered that they are, for me, in practice, they're actually very, very linked. Like, I don't tend to do a working without a spiritual element, and I don't tend to do a lot of spiritual stuff without some sort of tangible practices associated with it. So while I do think they're separate, yeah, like,
for you, lighting a candle is like a witchcraft type thing.
Yes. Basically, yeah, they're separate, but to me, they end up very intermingled, which is a realization that no, and that's sort of a realization that unfolded as I've been practicing for a long time. But especially, it unfolded during the 31 days of witchcraft prompts. I recognized that, wow, I do see my witchcraft as secular, but I'm also a very spiritual person, and so those two things are very intermingled for me. I don't think they need to be. I think they can be separate. You can, yeah, separate but intertwined is a really great way to express it, Ultraviolet Morgan. Yeah, Katie says, so if you're someone that gets scattered like me, passive might break. Might break. Might be. Oh, maybe you said might be great. I think that's maybe what you were getting at. Yes, I can be very distractible. I find that having items that are tied to particular intentions. So these pendants are a really good example. I have a small collection of these that I got through my subscription to the Witch's Bounty Box. And I have a tendency to charge and use these for specific purposes. So when I want to access gentle healing or more nurturing energy, I reach for this one right now. I had one that I was wearing before that was more fiery energy, So these to me are kind of like passive workings, right? I've given them I put an intention into them. I've done some working around. Yeah, great. Oh, I got there in the end. Oh, that's good. Oh, bye, Tammy. So for me, this is like a passive working. I charge it.
In the background, so to type.
Thank you, Grace. So I charge the item, and then it becomes a passive bit of magical support for me. I love things like this to support my work. And then there's times when I want to do, particularly I find my personal growth based magic that I do, my bigger work tends to be more active. So I tend to want to feed. Okay, so an example, this totally segued. Examples of passive workings for me might be protection work, right? Where I charge an item and I place it in a part of the home to be in charge of protection. Active work for me is often healing work. Unless I'm gifting somebody with an item meant to contain healing energy, then most of the time my healing work is something that I continually feed as a way of supporting somebody through a difficult time, or holding space for them to have an experience, providing them energy they can access, that sort of thing. Those are more active to me in general. I'm very much generalizing. Ultraviolet Morgan says, I think of passive magic in a similar way to passive income. Yes. You do the work up front and it keeps providing. That's exactly how I was trying to express it. Yeah, a passive income, you set it all up, you put it out there, and then it continues to do its work, such as creating a digital download that people can download for $1.99 on your website. That's passive income. You did all the work to create the download in the first place. You put it on your website, you promote it. So there's a little bit of like feeding it, but for the most part, it just kind of sits there and it generates income for you. It's exactly the same thing. Whereas getting up and going to work every day, that's active, right? You're doing something every single day or regularly, right? To bring in that income. It's a constant refreshing itself process rather than just a one-time kind of pop. Brenda says, when I want to send healing to loved ones, I say to myself, strength and harmony of heart, body, mind, and soul over and over while picturing that person. Yeah, that's really beautiful. Caroline says, Catholics light candles, call it a novena. I might not be saying that right. So they mix their ritual with spiritual. We can separate them if we want, mix them up. That's what's great about not being bound to a specific religious practice. Yes, exactly. So the whole point of being eclectic is you can mix them if you want, you can separate them if you want, and you're not tied to one camp. It's not like, oh, because I enjoy doing these things that mix spirituality and my craft, I can't do these things that separate them. You know what I mean? Raven says, I charge and purpose my crystals, but otherwise they gather my energy passively. I don't see them as being empty. Yes, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So for me, part of forming an intention, so this is just to drag us back a little bit. Part of forming the intention is deciding upfront, is this going to be a passive intention, like something I'm going to hold and create a working around and then release to do its job, or is this going to be an active intention? And if it's an active thing that you're going to be wanting to do, being aware up front about how much you're willing to put into it, like how much does it matter to you, is I guess maybe a better way to express it. How passionate are you about this particular thing? If it's something that you're like, yeah, you could do both or either, neither is right. Exactly. So part of forming the intention for me is deciding what I would be willing to put into it energetically, and either one-off or ongoing process. I think that all magic requires a certain amount of, what's the word I want to use here? Because I don't want to use the word sacrifice. It's not quite what I mean. Commitment may be a good word. A certain amount of willingness to put your money where your mouth is, so to speak, magically. Ultraviolet Morgan Tarot says active is more of a one-time type of thing. Yeah, it could be. I tend to see my passive workings as a one-off in a way. It depends on the kind, I guess. Yeah, so I would say like making a spell pouch, making a spell jar, creating a witch ball, charging an item for a particular purpose. These are kind of what I would consider passive things. You do the work once and maybe refresh it occasionally, but you create a thing that's going to do a job, or you charge a thing that's going to do a job, or yeah, like that. Whereas, yeah, investment's an excellent word, Deb. An energetic trade, Heidi. Yeah, that's another good way to put it. I do feel like when I want to do something particularly powerful, it feels like something that if I want it to maintain its power, it's going to require a consistent outpouring of input from me. Outpouring of input. It's going to require consistent input from me into it to continue to keep it moving forward. Kind of like the first analogy that pops into my head is the silliest thing ever. I was like, it's kind of like, you know, if you're a little bit thirsty, you're going to just pour yourself a glass of water, drink the water, and you're good. But if you're like super dehydrated, you're going to get yourself like a pitcher of water and pour glass after glass after glass. I don't know if that's a good analogy or a terrible analogy, but I feel like the more potent stuff you want to do, the more it's going to require more regular input from you. Yeah, it takes effort and nurturing, otherwise it would fizzle. Yeah. Ultraviolet Morgan, like an active money spell would be I want $500, and a passive would be I want wealth and prosperity continuously entering my life. Yes. I actually, that's interesting. Yeah, potentially. It's kind of, this is where it's kind of up to you. So for me, if I wanted to do a one-off spell to bring one influx of money, I'm likely to do a singular working, give that working an intention. Perhaps it's a candle that I've anointed and given a particular purpose, and I burned that candle till it's done. That's like a singular working. But that feels active to me. And if I want continuous, like I want to keep a continual money flow, then I might, like I have done, create an altar and every once in a while spend some time at that altar, but that still feels active to me. This is where it gets complicated to try to explain. Somebody said an IV, and I think that's a good analogy. What did somebody say? Lennon? Lennon said an IV. Yeah, like it's like, is this something that's going to be constantly oh, hi, Essence. Oh, it's nice to see you. That's totally fine. It's good to see you, though. Yeah, I'm trying to think of the best way to express this because there's definitely two sides to it, right? Okay, this is why though, because any intention can be active or passive. Any intention can require constant ongoing effort from you or could be created in a passive way. There's no spell I can think of that requires one method over the other method. It's kind of like what feels right to you for that particular scenario. So healing, for example, I've done as both a one-off that I charge an item and I gift that item to provide to be a battery of or a source of energy for somebody. And I've also done the kind of healing work. Hi, Donna. I've also done the kind of healing work where I regularly and nightly feed, right? Like maybe a candle I continually light and I focus on sending energy to a particular person or a situation or a set of people, etc., which is an ongoing active process. Both are completely valid ways to do the same kind of working. It just depends on what makes sense for you. Hello, Practically Mystic. Yeah, I hope that makes some kind of sense. The point of all this is to say, and we'll talk about this when we'll talk about these pieces, I think, a lot more when we start talking about different ways to actually build a spell or build magic, which is coming for sure. But I want to focus on how do you get that concrete idea of your intention in mind. And I think it's so nuanced and it's going to depend on what you're trying to accomplish. It's like I'm going to maybe start with either mentally or literally writing it down. What is it I want? What is the end goal? And I kind of work backwards from there. Okay, if my end goal is to feel prosperous and to not have to worry about money, then what needs to happen? And I kind of just work backwards, right? Like, how do I need to contain or corral this spell? Okay, well, I don't want my prosperity to come at the expense of someone else. There's more than enough to go around. So that could create an ethical boundary around this working. So I've started with what I want the end result to be. And I've worked backward and gone, okay, how do I need to contain this so that it doesn't go haywire? And I start looking at those kinds of things. Okay, so my container is that this is to come at no one else's expense, right? So I want this money to come freely because there's more than enough to share, right? I want this money to come freely, without other people suffering harm as a result. So I could create that as a part of my intention. And then I work backwards from there and I go, okay, well, how much effort do I want to put in? Okay, well, I want to put in this much effort and not this much effort. And so I create that as part of the container. And so as I continue to kind of drill down into details, you're working backwards from what's the big picture and then details. And it becomes more and more tangible as you think through or write about all these different aspects. Erica says it's like forming a question for a tarot reading. Yeah. Same process, at least very similar. Totally. Because of the tarot reading, you're trying to start with, okay, what is it I'm trying to figure out? Okay, how can I get very clear and specific about how I'm asking that question so I get the most useful information, so that I can get the most beneficial answer that's going to actually help me in this end goal, right? That's what, to me, forming a clear intention is about. It's like, what do I want to do this working for? How do I do that in the most effective way in keeping with my own ethical feelings, ethical boundaries, etc. Peggy's being a troublemaker
that
again.
That wasn't me. That was Essence this time. Somebody else started it.
Oh, okay. Oh, did Lisa stash that material on the couch per my previous request?
It was the Red with Dragons, right?
I think so.
Was it with dragons?
I think it was Red with Dragons. I'm pretty sure.
I actually bought that because of Essence.
I'm pretty sure.
I keep doing the her and him, and we all know that I know better. So,
excuse me. So, okay, bye, Essence.
Bye, Essence.
Yes, it was Red with Dragons. Okay, confirmed. So yeah, I hope that makes some sort of sense. I know it's like a little all over the place, but essentially it's okay. It's just like making good goals, right? You want to start with the big picture, and then you want to break it down into smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller steps with an intention forming. You're trying to start with what you're Peggy.
Okay, I'm going to go now that the red has been confirmed.
Okay. Lennon says, and intentions aren't wishes. Yes, we can have a wish, but we have to formulate an intention. Yes. So this is a good way of expressing it. The wish is the big picture. What is it I want? And then the intention is, how are you going to, what is the, where is it that your focus needs to go to manifest that wish and not manifest a whole bunch of other crap you didn't plan on? It's kind of like contingency planning, right? It's like you can, like I said, you could wish for more prosperity and you can make that your intention. But if you don't contain it, what happens if you've wished for more prosperity? This is going to sound horrible. And a relative like that you deeply care about passes away and you now get a large inheritance. I'm not saying that you caused that. What I'm saying is that you'll have feelings about that because you weren't laser focused about your intention. So forming that, exactly. So otherwise all 6-year-olds would have ponies. Point in fact. So if you think about what is the wish or what is the goal, and then you start creating more and more and more of a container around it, you begin to actually send your energy where it's going to be the most useful and do the least amount of damage in the process. Because I'm sure that so many people who have done workings
I want a pony.
Peggy wants a pony. She does not. You don't even want to ride a horse. What are you even saying?
I could maybe handle a pony.
What would you do with the pony?
I don't know.
Peggy doesn't want a pony. I would like a unicorn. Raven, I don't know what happened. I had to step away briefly, come back to talk about dragons. I don't know how that happened. I swear I'm not talking about dragons at all. It just happened. But so if we start with the idea, the big picture, and then we get focused about how our use of energy can be the most effective. Oh, here comes Peggy. Essence is gone now. You know that, right?
Everybody else is still here. Everybody's going dragons.
Yeah, this is hello. Hi.
That's the dragons.
Hello.
And I might be able to get the same design in blue, but
yes.
I haven't checked. But I'm still waiting on suppliers to reopen.
She's squirreling my chat.
I'm not. That was Essence.
Squirrel.
I'm blaming
Squirrel
Essence
my chat.
I'm blaming Neen.
You get a pony and you get a pony. Okay. Lennon says something helpful to.
I've got lots. This will be in the shop. I have lots.
Lisa's on topic. All of chat is having a squirrel moment. Truth. Truth. Okay. So here's another thing that is important because the word will came up. So in I don't know where this came from, probably Wicca. Somebody who knows more might be able to tell me. It's probably Wicca. The term, as I will it, so mote it be. Or some people will say, as I will it, so shall it be, which is a plain speak way to say the same thing. Will is your commitment to your intention, right? So when you say, as I will it, so mote it be, or as I will, so shall it be, or however you put that into place, wording wise, you're literally committing to that intention. So, Peggy, behave. So being clear.
Erica sent me a picture of a pony.
Thanks,
See,
Erica. Stop scrolling my wife. Okay, so I'm doing a real good job of staying on task here, guys. So your
You're
will
doing fine. The rest of us suck. That's great.
So your will is your commitment to your intention. And if you get to the point in the spell where it's time to say, as I will it, so mote it be, if that's part of your working, and you haven't gotten clear about what your will is actually saying, then that can get messy, right?
Ooh.
You want to be clear, you want to be focused, and you want to have a picture of what it is you're trying to do. Yeah, thank you, Erica. Okay, so okay, we're doing ponies and unicorns now. This is what's happening. Yeah, I think it is.
Mary just offered to send me a pony. I give her
Thanks.
that.
Okay, cool. So anyway, thoughts on will and intention? I'm gonna think twice before I ask Peggy to moderate my chat.
I'm sorry.
You're not sorry. You're laughing. Same. Are we good with intention? I don't know what's happening anymore. I hear Peggy typing and I'm concerned. Your actions will shape your intentions. Yeah, this is a whole other aspect too. Because
no, I think we just made a lot of sense. I don't think there's a lot to add to that.
Okay, I guess I'm done now, guys.
I'll keep talking. We need something to disrupt.
Oh, okay. Some examples. Let's pull it away from money for a minute. Let's talk about creating a working around self-confidence. Here, this is a good one. Okay. So big picture, I want to be more confident. Okay, cool. So let's drill it down. I want to be more confident. What do I don't want? Or where don't I want that confidence to come from? That's one of the ways to get clear on your intention. Okay, well, I don't want it to come at anybody else's expense. I don't want to be more confident because I've made somebody else feel small. So I've now, just in asking myself that question and answering that question, my intention has gone from I want to feel more confident to I want to feel more confident without making anybody else feel small. Now it's more clear. Then it's like, okay, I want to feel more confident without making anyone else feel small. What's the next question I can ask myself? Do I want to, do I want this to be an active or passive working? Do I want to put a lot of my energy into it, or do I just want it to kind of feed me in the background with a little more confidence? Well, I think for this one, I want to have something that will remind me to work on my confidence by being a bit of a talisman, or something that I can use passively so that I can just have to remind myself. So now my intention is going to be around wanting to be more confident, but not at anybody else's expense. And I would like it to be somewhat passive so that it can be more of a reminder to step into my own personal power. So now, oh my Lord, the chat right now.
You're fine. You're fine. We are listening. We're also not listening.
Okay. So anyway, so already just by going through these questions and kind of narrowing down what it is I want this to ultimately do for me, I now can be really clear not only about what the focus of the intention is going to be, which is more confidence, but not at other people's expense, but now I've already given myself an idea that I'm probably going to want to have some kind of item that I can charge, that I can feed, that I can use as a reminder. So I might then, based on that intention, already be off to the races to form my working. So it's like, okay, now I know what my intention is. I want to be more confident. And you can get more into details too, right? You can be like, okay, well, what kind of confidence? Are we talking about stepping into my power and using my voice more? Or do I want to be more confident about my physical body and how I present myself in the world? Do I want to, is this about body confidence, or is this about mental, emotional confidence? What if this is about confidence and being able to express myself and not feel like I need to express myself from a defensive place? Well, that's a totally different kind of working than if I want to be more confident about how I dress and how I feel in different kinds of clothing. So those are completely different concepts. So getting clear, bye, Calvi, enjoy your dinner. Getting really clear about what is it you're trying to accomplish, and then what's that going to look like, and what are the parameters exactly. Mm-hmm. So let's say what I really want to do is get more confident about how to express myself without being defensive. That's now a totally different kind of confidence. That's like, okay, I trust that I have a right to have a feeling or have an opinion or have a thought, and I don't need to be defensive. I don't need to be aggressive about how I feel. And that's what I want to do, and that's what I want to embody. So with that in mind, I would maybe, now that I have that as a clear intention, instead of maybe focusing on mirror work, which might be literally spending time in front of a mirror and working on my physical self-confidence, I'm going to maybe do throat chakra work and work on how to communicate in a clear way and in a healthy way and in a balanced way. And that's very, very different work. Whew, you guys, I got there. I managed to power through. Lennon says that helps to visualize the outcome and how to set the intention. And as you start to explore what it is you're trying to
monkey paw.
Remind me. Oh, Peggy's gonna type. She's gonna contribute. Donna says, so that time I did that binding on that scary bitch, it was active, while the protection working I did for Bailey was more passive. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, one was active, one was passive. Yes. Yeah, going through an example through the whole process. So how about this? Let's make it a little more interactive. Does anybody have an example of a working so that we can work through the process? Let's give us, somebody come up with a generic goal you might want. Maybe not generic, but just like a goal.
Right?
What did Peggy say? The monkey paw is a magical money paw.
This is kind of what you've been explaining.
And you get 3 wishes, but without the right intention, the wish ends up being a curse. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Lennon says, yes, Peggy, but someone dies in that. Okay, so let's do it as a group. Okay, so come up with a goal for a spell or a working. What's a goal you might want to do something about magically? And let's reverse engineer it as a group. So first person, goal, new home. Okay, perfect. Let's go with Moira's first. So manifesting a standard poodle. Oh, Deb. Okay, so first Moira. Okay, new home. So our big picture is we want a new house. Okay, so let's look at what are some of the possible things we might want to contain. What are some pitfalls of a working about finding a new house we might want to avoid? What are some pitfalls of finding a new house magically that we might want to avoid?
Well, you want to avoid buying a house that's way over your budget.
Peggy makes a good point. Avoid, okay, but we want a new house, but we want it to be a new house we can afford. Good point. Okay, what else? Let's get, and chat's a little delayed, so I have to give them time to. Location. Okay, so you want a new house, but you want a new house that you can afford that's in a particular location. Or you maybe want to avoid a particular location, or maybe you want to be a certain distance from your workplace, for example. Like, oh, I want to be within a half an hour commute of my workplace, as an example of location. So now we've identified we want the new house. We want it to be something we can comfortably afford. We want it to be in a certain location or within a certain distance. We don't want it to be a broken house. Good point, Deb. Somebody said something about a haunted house and I'm giggling. What happened in my head anyway?
Well, sometimes we manifest
no haunted houses. Yeah, okay, so we definitely don't want something that comes with a lot of icky juju. So cool.
We don't want to manifest something so badly that we end up with a monkey paw.
Corey says, yes, a new house is a good thing, not as a result of eviction or something negative. Yes, exactly. Avoiding lemons. Totally. So now we've created a bit of a container around what we don't want in that new house. So we're starting to create a bit of a mental picture. Somebody else said, is it a fixer up or a move-in ready? Like somebody might want a house that they can enjoy sprucing up, but they may want to have a container on how much sprucing up they want to do, right? These are all parts of sort of identifying, not falling apart. What features is it going to have? What are your sort of deal breaker features, the things that it must have for you to be comfortable there? Like when it comes to Peggy and I, when we were looking for a place to rent, we basically came up with a list of deal breakers. Okay, must have in-suite laundry, must have at least 1 parking space. What were some of the other things we had?
Must be within a certain range.
Obviously, must be okay for our pets, right?
Must be, yeah, there was a whole bunch of must be's. Must be within walking distance of stores.
Yeah.
Must
be close to transit. So you come up with like, okay, so you come up with the things you definitely don't want, and then you start to clarify the things you absolutely do want. And here's the cool part. You can have 2 levels of things, excuse me, that you do want. You can have these would be really nice to have, but they don't have to be there. And then there's the level of things where these really have to be there for this to be the right place. So now you've got a bit of a picture. You're like, okay, it'd be nice if it had blah, blah, blah. It doesn't have to, but it'd be nice, right? You can still have that be a part of the seed of intention you're going to be feeding. Okay, so now that we've asked ourselves what don't we want, and we've gotten a little bit more clear about what do we want, the next question is what kind of a working do we think this is going to be? Is this going to be something that we want to put energy into, like, say, every day or regularly? Or Raven says, okay, so this is more so simply house hunting. Kind of, because what you're doing is you're doing all of the things you would do to tangibly find yourself a place, but you're creating that container for what is your intention, what is it you actually want. Because if you don't ultimately know what you want before you do the working, your working is very likely to get you something not quite lined up right. Okay. A shed or a barn to hold my pony. Yeah, exactly. So it seems kind of boring to like go through all these details, but I think it's really, really important to get super crystal clear so that when you go to do your working, you have a ton of confidence about what it is you're trying to accomplish. And therefore it's very easy to focus your energy on that intention. But yeah, so my questions essentially to narrow down, to kind of sum up, my question would be, what's the big picture? Okay, we want to find a new house. What don't we want? Okay, we clarified that. What do we want? We've clarified that. And we've also clarified some of the most important things about what we want that are sort of deal breakers. And then when you get to the very end of this process, you've got a very clear image. And what some people will do, and this came up actually in chat, is create some kind of a vision board. If you have a vision board, or you take the time to write down what you're thinking, or you spend the time meditating or thinking about what it is that you want to do, and you get very clear about it, and you have a very solid idea of what it is you're trying to do, then all of the magic that comes after this step becomes really easy, right? How you're going to go about the working, which again, we'll have a whole other chat about how to build the working based on this intention. But initially, all of it, in a way, this is kind of like this is all the unseen effort that goes into magic, right? It's good night, Jujubee. It's all of the mental gymnastics you do so that you're going to be able to do the working you want to do and not have a whole bunch of unintentional consequences. Peggy says, or simply to clarify and focus on not just the thing, but how you want to feel after obtaining the thing. I can be flexible on a lot of stuff, but I damn sure want to be happy about having it. Yeah, this is why when I do prosperity magic,
I don't clarify down to the. I don't clarify down to minute details. I clarify. I want this, and I want this to make me happy.
Yeah, this is why I was going to say.
I can have whether or not I have a pool, as long as I'm happy.
You don't care. Yeah. See, and to me, it's a little bit, I don't want to do, and here's something interesting about the intention setting process. The one thing you want to avoid doing when you're setting an intention is specifying the how. Your only job in setting an intention is specifying the what. What is it I want? What don't I want? And perhaps creating some ethical boundaries, but not saying how it's going to happen or how it's going to unfold, except for, as I mentioned before, that idea of like ethical boundaries, like, okay, well, I want this, but I don't want it to come at somebody else's expense, is a way to, that is a little bit about how, right? But you can identify how you don't want it to happen, but you definitely do not want to constrain your magic into how it's going to happen most of the time. I think sometimes it could be useful, but if you make it too difficult for the universe or deity or however you want to see how magic works, if you make it too difficult for those boxes to get checked off, if the list is a little too long, you're probably not going to have any kind of result at all, right? So you want to keep it focused on the what, and not focused on the how. This is what I want, this is how I want to feel, and that question about like, how do I want to feel is important. When I do prosperity work, I work specifically with 9 of Cups style energy, because in addition to financial comfort, I want to feel emotional contentment, emotional stability, and emotional fulfillment, right? I don't want it to just be cold, hard, empty cash that has brought with it maybe other things that I don't want along with it. Yes,
Oh, weird.
Ultraviolet Morgan says it best. If you specify the how, you make it a lot harder to get to you. Like people who always want to win the lotto. Exactly. There's a lot of overlap, even if it sounds kind of cheesy, because some of you will think this is cheesy, but there is actually a lot of really interesting overlap around the idea of, say, the what's that called? The law of attraction and forming a magical intention. Yeah. Mooncrone says, once I wrote a simple list of everything I wanted in a place to live. I stuck the list in a book and forgot about it. 10 years later, I moved to a place that had everything on the list. You essentially did a passive spell. You put all of this effort into thinking about what it was you wanted, and you basically charged that with your determination to have it. And that became your passive working, even if you didn't plan it as a working. And this is why intention is the most critical component of any spell. It doesn't require any tools. It doesn't require any special ingredients. If you get this part nailed, you will have a much more positive experience in general with magical work than if you gloss this part over or you get lazy about this part, speaking from experience. Because I've done a lot of sloppy magical work where I'm like, yeah, I just generally want blah, blah, blah to happen. And then it either fizzles out or I can't even remember what it was I was specifically focusing on and it just goes sideways. Or, yeah, exactly. Moira says magic equals law of attraction. I don't think that's cheesy. Fair.
This is the one.
Oh, Peggy's book. Oh, I've got a story to tell about this book, and it's so perfect for this. Okay. This book's, in fact, this specific copy of this book. So this is a book called The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace D. Wattles. And this is a title of a book that sounds like something I would never in a bazillion, million, trillion years pick up and read. Which one of us discovered it first?
You found it.
It was me first, right? Okay, not the physical copy, but the book that the book exists. I think you found a digital copy somewhere. You stumbled on it.
No. I found a reference to the book.
Okay, so
didn't know what it was or what it looked like. But I found a reference to the book in your law of the, in your something to craft.
Okay, so in essence, this book is what the movie and the book The Secret, which talks about the law of attraction. This book, while it was written like a long time ago,
1919 or something.
19. I'm going to give you the original. If it's in here, is it even in here?
It's in there somewhere.
Yeah, this particular copy was printed in like 1996, but like this original book was written. Oh, I wish I could. I hope it says it in here somewhere. Yeah, I'm looking. 19. Oh no, that's 190 pages. Hold on.
It might be on the very back page.
Yeah, I'm on the very back page, babe.
No, the back cover. Sorry.
No, I already looked there. Anyway, okay, early 1900s. Peggy will look it up first. Okay, but let me tell the story. Okay. So this basically talks about the idea of the law of attraction. And Peggy and I have done a lot of talking about the law of attraction. We've done a lot of watching. The movie What the Bleep Do We Know is one of our favorites. There's a whole bunch of stuff around the law of attraction.
1910 was when the first was in the
1910.
The first edition of that book was printed in 1910.
The concepts in here are essentially law of attraction concepts. But let me tell the story about intention. So I wanted to test the theory. And I was all caught up in the I guess the hype of the idea of the law of attraction. And Peggy and I had to get some car work done. We were in this like nowhereville. Like it was basically, I don't know if were you even with me? No, you weren't with me. I came home and told you the story. Okay. So I had to get some car work done. I was basically in an industrial area and I had dropped the car off, but I obviously didn't have transportation. So I was just keeping myself busy while I was waiting for my car. And I was thinking about this book, The Science of Getting Rich. I'd already read the digital copy of it. And I was thinking about what the bleep do we know.
No, you hadn't read that. You had read The Secret.
And I'd also read this by the time this event happened.
Had you?
Yep. Okay. So I'm wandering and I see like an antique store randomly in this industrial area. I don't know why. I go into this antique store. I'm kind of wandering around, killing time. And upstairs in this antique store, there was a single bookcase, about double the width of this bookcase that's behind me. So it was big, but it was just a single bookcase. It was not a bookstore. It was just a bookcase. And I literally focused my intention because I wanted to prove to myself that this was possible, right? Okay, well, if the law of attraction works, then let's test the theory. I focused all of my intention and all of my energy on, I'm going to find, as if it was just for sure, I'm going to find a copy of The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace Wattles on this used bookshelf. I'm going to find one. And I focused on it like I believed it, which is the whole point of the law of attraction, right? If you've heard anything about that. And then I started looking through the shelf and I could not make this up. this is where this physical copy came from, was that store, that day, after saying I'm going to find this book. And I think it's really important to point out this was not a metaphysical store. This was not a store that had anything new agey in it. This was a random antique store that happened to have a bookshelf of old books. I mean, I don't know. I was so upset that Peggy wasn't with me, because when I brought this book home and told her this story, I was like, you're never going to believe me. But I swear on everything, I did not see this book, or I thought about this idea as soon as I saw the bookshelf. I didn't, and this was like tucked, like you can see the spine is quite thin. This was like smashed in between of a bunch of other books on like the second from the bottom, third from the bottom. It wasn't like anywhere super visible. It's not like it was like on display and I'm like, I'm going to buy. And I was like, Peggy's nobody's ever going to believe me when I tell this story. Nobody will ever believe me. It was a bookcase within a antique store. I might have said it wrong in my excitement, but yeah, it was a bookcase inside of an antique store.
You were just, and because
but I was blown away. I was like, there's no way.
Because we had just been discussing the law of attraction, and that is why we found out about this book, because this book was one of the main books that the law of attraction and The Secret were based on.
Yeah. I mean, this sounds like it's like a get rich quick book, but it's not. It's literally about, and it literally
focusing the law of attraction to work.
Yep, and it literally talks about stuff like basically, there's more than enough to go around. It talks about concepts about the best business deal is one where both people feel like they're getting the better end of the bargain or the better end of the deal. Yeah, TC's Life says, so as you're focusing on it or physically looking for it, make it an active working. So in this case, I mean, I don't know. I hadn't really thought it through that much. I literally set an intention, focused my will on that intention, and then this happened. Then I found it. So both the focus on my intention and the actively looking for it were both active processes. But I didn't think about like any kind of long term. It was definitely meant to be like a one-off experience. It wasn't something that, and at the time I didn't see it as magical working of any kind. I just was like, I want to see how the law of attraction works. Let's try it out. But it gave a lot of.
You were asking for a particular result without and just letting it happen.
Yeah, exactly. Shan says, I use my phone background as a vision board. Yeah, phones and Pinterest boards and things like that are really, really great for holding an intention, creating an intention, visualizing an intention. But I guess all of this to say that if you can get laser focused about the what, and you know precisely what it is that you want and you're clear about it, then manifesting it becomes much more attainable, and building a spell to help support this intention gets a lot easier. So essentially, let's come back to our analogy. The intention is the seed. Everything you do once this seed has been formed, this is the physical, the non-physical representation rather of your intention and of your will. Once this is formed and it's kind of almost corporeal in the sense that like you know this is what you want, you know this is what it is you're trying to accomplish. When you're solid on that point, this is the seed. Everything you do after that to build a working is about how you're going to plant that seed, what you're going to do to water that seed, feed that seed. This might be the kind of thing where, okay, a good example, a dandelion, when it turns into its little snowball poofiness where you can blow on it and send the little seeds everywhere, you can have an intention that's like the dandelion seed, and your working is going to be to release that seed to go do its work. Just like you blow on a dandelion seed. You don't go find the dandelion seed and water it and feed it. That would be like a passive working, right? The dandelion seed is a good example of a passive working. An active working is the tomato seed that you plant and you fertilize and you maybe put compost on and you water and you make sure it gets the right amount of sunlight and you baby it and you make sure it doesn't dry out and you make sure this happens and that happens because you're going to turn it into this big tomato plant. Two completely different kinds of working, both require a concrete, solid seed. They both require you to have this viable seed. Creating your intention is creating your viable seed. How you go about nurturing that seed or taking care of that seed or releasing that seed is based on how you build the spell, right? That's going to be how you build the working. It's good to know up front, is this a seed I'm going to fertilize, feed, and water, or is this a seed I'm going to release and let it go do its thing where it's meant to go do it. And those are both valid ways to practice magic. And again, we can break those down when we start talking about how to create the spell in the first place. But the very most important first component is viable seed. Coming up with your viable seed. Marion says, last week I started meditating in my garden and my neighbor started cutting their grass. I focused on it to stop. Literally 30 seconds later, it stopped because they forgot to get gas for it. Nice. Yeah, Lennon. Yes, Peggy, you have to shift your attitude to let it. Oh yeah, because Peggy says, a friend of mine once said, the universe is desperately trying to do everything it can to make you happy. You just have to let it. A lot of magical work and law of attraction like completely line up beautifully. And if you think about those same principles and you apply them to your magical practice, and here's the beauty of an eclectic practice. It is completely valid to let concepts or practices like the law of attraction support your magical practice. Like I said, some people are going to hear law of attraction and they're going to have associations with that will not help them. And some people will have associations with the law of attraction. It's like, oh my gosh, that's magic. And I can totally see how to make that work. It's no different than somebody who enjoys prayer as a form of magic. Some people will see prayer as a form of manifesting and as a form of magic. The beauty of eclectic witchcraft is that you can pull inspiration and ideas and concepts from anywhere. As long as it's effective for you and it makes sense for you and it is something you can really sink your teeth into, then you're going to be able to put a meaningful magical practice into place. Lynn says, I would focus on what I want and I don't worry about the how. And when I visualized it enough, I go about my day, like try to forget about it. The next day I would do the same. Yeah, exactly. That's kind of a cool hybrid of passive active. You occasionally feed it by checking in with it, but when you're not actively checking in with it, you're letting it go and letting it do its thing. Some people will really enjoy kind of micromanaging their spell work. And some people will really enjoy like just putting all the effort in at the outset and letting it do its thing. And some people will do a bit of both. And I do all of those, depending on the working, depending on how I feel about the working, depending on what intuitively feels like that particular working requires. And a lot of it is feeling my way through. Some people keep a journal of their magical practices and their experiments and their workings. And this is a really useful thing to do. Goodbye, TC's life. I'm wrapping up soon anyways. It's a really useful thing to do to kind of log or that's what I'm looking for, chronicle? Log's a good word. To kind of log, okay, I did this working. This was the intention I set. This is how I visualized it. And this is how I ended up creating the working about it. And then checking in with that log and seeing how things played out. Another thing that you can put into your intention is a timeline. We didn't talk about this, but a timeline can be an important component of your viable seed. Is this I want to see a result within a week, a day, 3 months, a year, open-ended, keep it coming? Like there's so many different ways to do timelines, but that can be a part of your seed as well. Caroline says, my friend who taught me the tarot when I was 16 would say, what you think on you bring to you, so you can bring good or bad from your thoughts and your intentions. Yeah, a lot of people feel that way.
Yeah.
And there can be a tricky territory there because I think sometimes then you can end up assuming that you somehow brought on really bad crap to you that you didn't bring on. So this is one of the areas where law of attraction can get a little problematic for me, because some proponents of law of attraction will say that the universe always conspires to give you what you want. So if you're always focusing on, for example, you're driving and you're always focusing on, okay, don't break down, or don't get in an accident, that the universe only hears get in an accident, break down, etc. I think this is an interesting line of thinking, and I think it is important to focus on what you want as opposed to what you don't want. I think that makes a lot of sense, but I also think there's some problematic stuff there around somehow feeling responsible if something bad happens to you, like, oh, I must have manifested it. Not always. I don't think that's always the case. Oh my God, what? Dynamite? Oh, Donna says, I'm kind of a one-hit wonder kind of chick. I like to light the fuse, wait, and watch. Yeah, that's a super valid way to do magic, and I do a lot of magic that way. Raven says, hyperactive thyroid, no fun. Mine did that, lost weight, went on meds, it went away for a while. Oh, I think I missed the precursor to that conversation. But
Mary says she used a lot of attraction to try and lose weight, and she was specific, so she ended up getting an overactive thyroid.
Yeah, there you go.
Sometimes if you manifest without conditions, you end up with a monkey's paw.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, you have to be careful of that too.
Okay, bye, Claire. Have a good day. So at the end of the day, all we're talking about with intention is creating our viable seed. And I think if you stick with that analogy, it will really, really help. You want to be able to know what that seed looks like, how big it is, how small it is, if that makes any sense as an analogy. You want to have the details of that seed, and you want to know how that seed is ultimately going to do its best work, passively or actively. I think that's an important part of figuring out what the seed looks like. Once you've got that part down, then you can just craft from that place, right? Then all the fussy detail stuff is kind of done. And now you're just going to like look for how to build a spell based on that intention. Hopefully that makes sense. I'd be curious if anybody has questions based on all of these analogies, because I know it got kind of confusing for a bit. If you are not sure what I mean by anything, let me know. I'm happy to clarify. Yeah. Ultraviolet Morgan, my mom always said, be careful what you wish for, you might get it. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So I think it's just, in the beginning when I was new to doing magic, I was very loosey-goosey with it, and I really got intangible loosey-goosey kind of results. Karma question mark, Moira? This is part of, I'm not sure if I fully understand what you're asking. Are you just asking if that's like a part of building the seed? Yeah, I would say that's part of why you want to consider the ethical ramifications of what it is you're asking for, so that you're confident about how that may or may not backfire on you. Like things like, oh, I want more money, but I don't want that money to come at somebody else's expense, is a good way to build in some sort of protection from karma is not really what I want to say. Yeah, for the highest good of all is a good way to frame your intention. For the highest good of all is a great way to create a bit of a container, an ethical container around your intention. This is where some of the Wiccan read, I think, comes into play. Like, in it harm none, so mote it be, gives you a bit of a container, right, around it. But I think it is important to have the thought process with yourself. There may be certain things you want to do where maybe it isn't in the highest good of all, and that's something you think through and you craft as part of your working and as part of your intention. Lynn says, I think it's the intention of the heart and belief system. Yeah. Essentially, your intention is kind of like running your goal through a series of filters to make sure you're incredibly clear about what you do and don't want. Good night, Chanda. So yeah, hopefully that makes some kind of sense. Let me know if there's any other questions. We'll probably wrap up in the next 2 to 3 minutes. So I'll just check in and see.
Didn't you say it half an hour ago?
Maybe.
Or an hour ago?
I was also late to my own life by like a good 20 minutes. So, you know.
Yeah, well.
Oh, good. I'm glad it was helpful. So I'll give. Oh, Peggy's giggling.
Oh, no, just.
I feel like I'm going to yawn on camera. Excuse me.
I had to click away for a second, then I clicked back and I saw Donna's comment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So I think we are all good. I don't think there's any more questions rolling in. But if you are watching this, especially if you're watching it after the fact, and you have questions about some of the stuff I've said, I know I've kind of been a little all over the place. And in these rambles, sometimes I end up contradicting myself, not intentionally. Oh, Donna, that's fantastic. So I have to read this because it's really great. Donna says something like this: I bind you, bitch face. I bind you from doing harm against others and harm against yourself for the highest good. Something a little bit like that. Lennon says, I would advise to be mindful of nagging feelings like, are there block? Pay attention to those as well. Are there blocks? You mean like nagging feelings? Yeah, if I'm understanding you correctly, like if sometimes you might be sensing obstacles to something, and that's something you want to work into your intention. Like, I can tell there's a block here, so I want to work in some busting through obstacles into this intention too. Yeah, that was really funny. Yeah, like negative feelings hidden in fears. Yes. And it's interesting, as part of your intention forming process, you can also examine how you might already be getting in your own way, how you might already be self-sabotaging, or might already be creating your own obstacles to what it is you want. Because if you're only focusing on bringing in, and you're not focusing on what you may need to clear away from within, or even from without, as part of that working, then something's gonna hit a barrier and it's not gonna be able to do what it needs to do. Hopefully that made sense. Yeah.
I think it made sense. Oh my gosh.
Like road openers and stuff. Yeah, we're going to dive into all kinds of stuff. I'm going to be leaning into, keep in mind that as an eclectic practitioner, sometimes I'm just going to open up topics and we're just going to like brainstorm together, maybe, you know, and sometimes people are going to bring, most of the time, you guys are going to bring your own experiences, your own knowledge to the discussion. Definitely not just, I'm just kind of sharing some of the stuff I've picked up on, and it's just, these aren't like how-tos or meant to be how-tos. They're mostly, this is kind of what's worked for me, and maybe some of that will resonate and some of it won't, but definitely filter anything I say through your own internal lens, like what makes sense to you, what sounds right to you versus what sounds like it doesn't matter or doesn't make sense to you. And don't feel like, you know, if your intention forming looks different than my intention forming, that doesn't make it wrong. So just make sure that you're being thoughtful about it, I guess, is the main point to take away. Whatever process you use to filter down to your clear intention, just make sure it's a process that makes sense to you and that feels authentic to you and that feels like it covers your bases, the things that are important to you. For me, it's important to have like an ethical container around my work. For me, it's important for me to be really clear and be able to visualize. But for somebody else, there may be different things that are important to them around forming intentions. So honor your own process. And don't be afraid to make mistakes. Just be as mindful as you can in trying. And don't be afraid to track your results, because that can be a really great way to figure out what kinds of workings, that were enjoyable for you to do. Because I'll tell you right now, if your magic feels like a chore, you're not going to do a whole lot of it, right? So tracking, okay, I tried to do this working, but I ended up making it way too hard on myself and I got in my own way. These are things you can track too. Or, wow, I really wish I'd have put like an end date on this spell because, man, I feel like it's a slog now, right? There's lessons you'll learn along the way, just doing things and trying things. I see you, dragon people in the chat. I did a good job. I held on to my focus and my intention. How often do I do magic workings? I'd say on average, like 1 to 2 a month. Some months, nothing. Some months are really magic heavy if there's a lot going on that I feel like needs my attention. I'd say on average, yeah, 1 to 2 somethings a month. Somethings. Most of my magic is fairly low maintenance and simple. And every once in a while, maybe 3, 4 times a year, I might do a really big working, something that involves a lot of attention and a lot of energy. And I'm more likely to do more magical work in the winter, in the sense of like, I tend to do more rituals in the wintertime. I tend to plan more deep and darker, more involved work in the wintertime or in the darker hours. Oh my God, you're so adorable, Donna. In the summer, I'm more likely to do more spontaneous magic. I mean, I do spontaneous magic year round. Like if somebody I know is going through a thing, I almost always will do something magically almost immediately, if not immediately. It just, that kind of urgency, I feel like I want to do something tangibly right away. So I very rarely will wait more than 12 hours if there's something going on with somebody that is important to me. Usually something will happen fairly right away. So if a lot of stuff's going, Peggy's dragons. But if a lot of people in my life are going through a lot of things, I'm more likely to do more workings. Workings for myself tend to be passive workings, like having altar spaces, having certain maintained intentions that I feed and nurture actively as well. Those are the kinds of things. So I either create and charge items for regular use, or to serve a purpose or a job, like home protection, things like that. I will sometimes set up crystal grids as workings. Sometimes I will do workings that are meant to be gifted. And most of the time, I'm doing magical work on an as needed basis. Like, some shit just went down in my life. I need to do some protection. Or, this went down in my life. I really need to build up my internal resources energetically so that I have more to spare. I need to do communication work. That's something I need to do regularly. Raven, I tend to just dismantle my workings when the time feels right. Yeah, a lot of my like maintenance-y kind of magics, especially things like protections, especially extra protections, like maybe during a particular difficult time, I feel like I need to have boosters to my regular household protections. I'll do that stuff. And then when it feels stable again, I'll take down those extras, but I always keep a certain base level of protection. That's one of the magics I probably do the most. Magic and healing are probably at the top for sure. So yeah. Oh, Donna, you bet. Yeah, that was a real beefy one. But it was interesting. I'll have to tell you something about that later, Donna, because there were some overlaps of working happening in that spell, which was really interesting. Emma says, if I wanted to manifest something specific and then later decided I don't want it anymore, would it be a good idea to mindfully release the manifestation? Absolutely. Like, let's say you're like, I want a new house, and you've done all of this work and you've created this item. Let's say you've charged an item to help you manifest the home of your dreams. And so maybe you've got an amulet, or maybe you've got like a pendant, or maybe you've got a small finding a new home altar in your house. Then in my perspective, if you're like, suddenly something's happened and you really want to stay where you are, then I would say it's really important to mindfully piece apart or dismantle that working, make it clear, form your new intention. And this is interesting because I think it's easier to call off magic if you're replacing it with something. And I have this feeling about habits and cyclic behavior and stuff, which that's a whole rabbit hole that I get into in a lot of detail in my book, which is coming soon, by the way. I'm very excited. Okay, anyway, that's a whole thing. Why are you over here distracting me again?
No reason.
Peggy made cloths today. She's proud. There's panda cloths. Panda cloths. Don't let me forget to talk about dismantling magic.
Somebody meant, okay, people are like leaving shopping lists in the comments of what they want to see.
Oh.
I've got 4 different pandas.
Okay, you over there for just a second.
I'm going.
Okay, sorry, real quick. Dismantling magic. So instead of just taking something down, which by itself can be fine, and I like to break up that energy somehow. So like, let's say I've got a crystal grid, I would take everything down, I would cleanse the area, I would really break it up. I also like to replace with something to hold the new intention, even if it's just a small little baby working, something to redirect that energy to what I now want. So if I wanted a new house and now I want to stay in the current house, I would break apart the spell work. If it was a spell pouch, I would dismantle it and release it. But I would wait, sorry, honey, I don't want to get too distracted. I'd break apart that energy first, and then I would replace it with a small honoring my existing home kind of energy, right? Peggy is literally making a list. Y'all are crazy. Oh my God.
Oh.
We need to have, we need to have a window shop with me, Peggy's stuff live, where we literally go through what she has and let people start making their wish lists. Oh boy, here she comes. Here she comes.
This is harder to see until you're up close. It's Day of the Dead with skulls. Okay, just before all this shit happened and I had to shut down, it helps him. I went on a shopping trip, guys.
I know, she's actually got a lot of fabric to play with.
So I've got some of that stuff, and then some of the other stuff, they ran out. Some stuff I've got, some stuff I don't. It's really weird right now what I've got in stock.
We'll have to do a window shop with me, Peggy stuff kind of chat. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, okay. So I hope that answered questions. Yes to dismantling magic. And we can talk more about that too when we talk about building spell work and different ways to build spells. I haven't decided on next week's topic yet. I've got a list. So I will dig that up and figure out what's going to come next soon. Thank you to everybody for Marion. Yes, please, Peggy QVC. Oh my God. Oh, ravens. Yes.
I have ravens.
Yes. You could bring on aging stars for your shopping channel. Yeah.
Yes, sorry, not sorry. This was not intentional.
Thank you so much for hanging out with me, guys. I really, really appreciate. Oh, sorry, book status. Yes, I'm sorry. Deb asked me like twice. So I literally have a copy of the manuscript with me now. Layout is essentially finished. We just have to do one final read through to check for any last minute little any missed typos. One last read through. And next step is printing a sample copy to pour over and make sure it's still perfect. And then it's creating the Kindle version because we're working on the paperback version first because then it's apparently easier to do the Kindle version. So then we finalize the Kindle version, which should be fairly quick. We're aiming for end of June release. So yeah, it's been through more of it. It's been through so many stages of copy editing at this point. It's actually kind of nuts. This is just like the could we have possibly still missed something stage? And guaranteed there'll be something that's missing. Like there'll be a typo, or there'll be like an extra piece of punctuation or a missing piece of punctuation. I'm completely at peace with it at this point because it's had so much copy editing now that like anything like that possibly slipped through all of those eyeballs, I'm okay with. I'm good with. So yeah, hopefully end of June release. I will keep you guys posted. It is very, very exciting, and the layout made it look really, really beautiful. And I will, I'm sure, make a video kind of showing it off and talking about it and stuff like that. So we will definitely be doing that. So very, 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 very soon, very, very soon, it will be coming. So yes. Good night, Donna, and good night, everybody. I'm going to one last show and tell. Will it have a unicorn on the cover? No, but it has a labyrinth on the cover. Does anybody remember this? This is not mine. This is a new one Peggy made.
I haven't even done this one yet.
Ugh. Oh, you haven't made it yet. Oh, that's just the fabric.
That's unicorns.
Some of you will recognize this from my reading table because I have one of those.
These are massive.
I don't know how she managed to control herself, Ultraviolet Morgan.
Who did what?
Somebody said you hadn't said anything naughty or dirty. Don't do it. Don't do it. Just let it be.
I haven't said an F-bomb once.
No, you've been so good. We're gonna roll with it.
Why?
We're gonna roll with it.
Why? Oh, she's spoiling my fun.
And yes, it will be opened, Raven. Aww. Yeah, it is gonna happen. It is gonna happen. I think. What are you aiming for, hun? July? June? Steve just pointed out that I've been talking about releasing your viable seed as a potential dirty connotation. This is a good point.
Well, it's incredibly dirty.
Yeah, it does.
I missed it.
Steve says they're like, it's already been naughty. What are you talking about?
Okay, so sugar skulls, koalas, ravens, dragons, wolves, unicorns, fairies, pandas.
Babe, I gotta wrap it up. I'm wrapping it up.
I know, I'm sorry.
Okay.
How about dragonflies?
Dragonflies are always a yes. I don't think you even have to ask.
Okay, I'm done.
The problem with masks was the supplies suddenly were impossible to find, particularly elastics. Okay, we're gonna wrap up. We're gonna wrap up. We will keep you posted on the status of Peggy's shop, but I'm hoping soon. I think we're hoping in the next month or so.
I'm waiting for them. Okay, my suppliers are just starting to reopen now, and international mail is backlogged, and so they need a little bit of time.
There's just a little bit more evening out of things.
To get more back to normal once, so I can start getting supplies again, and once I can start shipping and actually have things end up where they're supposed to go in less than a month and a half.
We're saying goodbye. Yeah, we're good. Okay, we'll keep you guys posted on all the things. Yes. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and we will see you guys in the next one, which will be next Wednesday, ideally 5:30 p.m. Pacific, unless something comes up. So we'll keep you posted. Have a great day or evening, everybody. Bye.
I said bye and it didn't go. There it goes.